Joe, I know this was actually somebody that you kind of wanted to pivot to when the Matt Arnold news broke that he was going to sign an extension with the Brewers. There were not a lot of experienced names out there. There was obviously a lot of guys with no experience in the GM chair being linked to the Mets. What's your kind of initial reaction? It seems like this came together pretty quickly, although most of this search was underground the whole time.
Yeah, it definitely came together pretty quickly, but I think all in all, it's a perfectly fine hire. I think it's just at this point when they missed out on Billy Bean, they missed out on Theo Epstein, they missed out on David Stearns. Then they went to the next level. And like you mentioned, Matt Arnold felt like a very real possibility, as we talked about on the podcast. Once that fell apart, they then started looking at assistants, and we talked about Raquel Ferreira. Uh, who else we talk about? Peter Bendix. Like, it's names that I'm now going to go on and forget. And of course, Adam Cromie in the most recent days. And ultimately, what the Mets came to the conclusion is Billy Eppler makes a lot of sense as a guy that has
Well,
scouting background, has analytical background, and most importantly, has done this job before.
yes, it's been in the chair,
And
right?
he's had this chair. So we can argue how good he was. You can obviously the results speak for themselves. The Angels weren't a playoff team while he was there, and there were some questionable decisions made. But at the same time, the person that they hired doesn't require Sandy Alderson holding their hand, Sandy Alderson kind of showing them the ropes of how to run a baseball organization. Billy Eppler could walk in tomorrow, sit at the chair, and know what to do.
Do you think there's anything to be said about hiring a guy in a good way that has worked directly for an owner that has a crazy amount of money and a big spending attitude in free agency pretty consistently almost every year, in a sense where I'm sure at times Epler, GMs love to spend, but they also like to walk away when things get crazy. There was always a lot of pressure on Epler to close deals, no matter how crazy they got. Do you think there's a added benefit here of a guy having experience like that and now going to work for Steve Cohen, who realistically, as much as we're excited about it, there is some bad that comes with that you have to, temper owners and be like, listen, you don't want to sign this 8 to 10 year deal, get too crazy here.
Yeah, I think working for a guy like Artie Moreno, which is kind of an extreme. I know I've heard a lot of things about how kind of difficult he is to work for at times, and he's very much hands-on. And Steve Cohen has claimed he won't be hands-on, so for now we might as well hold him at his word. But certainly, I think Epler having experience with a owner that had some difficulties is only a benefit. I don't I don't know necessarily that Steve Cohen's going to be the same way, but I think it obviously helps Epler that he's dealt with ownership problems. And, there's certainly discussions within the baseball community about Steve Cohen, what kind of owner is he going to be? Still early. We don't know. But Epler's, I think, fully prepared for this.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that it's good that they went the experienced route. As much as there's a lot of young, exciting names around the game that are very, very bright and might be really good with analytics, might be really good with scouting, might be really good at things like with Cromie. It was, hey, he's been in the room or understands arbitration scenarios, right? Specialized skills. And I think with Epler, as much as he's had a tenure that, of course, people kind of associate, failure with for the most part, there's a lot of things that he's run, he's had some successes with. And for the Mets, it's a voice in the room that, can stand on its own at times, right? This has been a Sandy Alderson driven franchise for the better part of the last decade. Of course, you have the stop with Brody Van Wagenen. But overall, this is a new voice. And, everybody looks at the Angels tenure, but he was with the New York Yankees for a long time and had, there was a lot of success there when he was there as well. So I think this feels like, I think everything you're going to hear with this hire is, oh, the David Stearns connection, and oh, wait till next year and they get Stearns. And this is like laying the first brick for the big thing on top of it. But I think as its own, this is a really important hire for what you cannot understate is a gigantic Mets offseason ahead.
Yeah, the Stearns connection's interesting. I mean, certainly when I saw Joel Sherman from New York Post tweet that one of his best friends, one of Epler's best friends in baseball is David Stearns. Obviously, the reports are out there that the Mets are hoping and waiting and thinking David Stearns' contract ends next year, year after, some point. But whenever it ends, they think inevitably that he might be willing to come to the Mets to be the president of baseball operations. So having that connection, I think I mentioned this on the pod a couple of weeks ago, that in a best case scenario, you could build your version of what the Cleveland Indians have with Chris Antonetti and Mike Chernoff, kind of that double-headed monster of sorts at the top of the front office. But I'm not worried about David Stearns. The reality is he's a year or two away for sure, if ever. Like, there's no guarantee that this is going to happen.
Yeah,
So
we've learned far from a guarantee.
far from a guarantee, exactly. So I think what's important here is that the Mets hired somebody that they know could come run baseball today. And if Stearns comes in down the road, fantastic. If he doesn't, maybe Billy Eppler grows into that president of baseball operations role. And then you
Sure.
hire someone young under him and you kind of build your own thing. I think the options are certainly open going forward, but the connection to David Stearns doesn't hurt because we all want to dream that's what Mets fans are doing.
Yeah, it would be nice, right? And I'm just trying to get some of the comments in here, and we have some flowing in. The first one from Tom, he said Cohen said he wants someone who isn't going to be learning on the job, and this is that to a T, right? This is a guy that has literally done all of these things, and he's handled a gigantic international signing, right? Like Otani before. He's handled the in-house contract of somebody obviously like a Trout, and of course, really top to bottom the organization with a lot of money, not even a situation where some of these guys might be coming from a lower budget team, and it's overwhelming when you're in the ballpark of the tier 1A free agents over and over again. So I think that's a really important comment to go through. Another one here that I personally will read more into now that this is official. This is from Almir Lima Jr., who said, "How about the concerns regarding Epler's handling of the Callaway hire and the Tyler Skaggs incident?" Those are things personally that I have not read enough into, but are definitely going to be talking points here in New York, of course. Is there anything you would add to that, Joe?
Yeah, I think they're valid things that
Absolutely.
he has to answer to. There's no question about it. I guarantee he'll be asked
He'll
that.
be asked.
Yeah, during his opening press conference. So you'll get the answer that you want. One thing that I want to know is that the Mets, what is a normal process is to hire a vetting firm. And Corn Ferry is one of the most well-known ones. I know you mentioned that the Jets, one of their GMs was hired
John
from
Idzik.
John Idzik. Great, great. But the Mets use not one, but three vetting firms in this process. They wanted to make sure that they checked into these individuals as much as humanly possible. So do I know the background behind the Mickey stuff? No, or Skaggs. Obviously, I know what happened, but I don't
Yeah.
know the background and how Epler, or if there was anything there. At the end of the day, too, he's the top of the front office here. Is he aware of like the inner dealings when you're talking about the Skaggs thing? That feels like that was a behind the scenes, almost like clubhouse kind of thing. Like,
Medical,
is
like
he?
trainer
Yeah,
related.
like stuff
Yeah.
like that. I don't know his involvement, but I think it's an excellent point and something he has to answer to, along with, of course, baseball questions. He didn't have a winning season with the Angels as GM. So there's things he's gonna have to answer to, and there's no question there's on and off the field. But I'm hopeful this time that utilizing all of these vetting firms that the Mets know everything there is to know about Billy Eppler.
Without a doubt. This is an area they cannot miss with this. It's been a rough go across the board in the last year, really. Not just even the Cohen era, the Wilpon era as well. You need to vet the backgrounds. So I'll get more comments in here. A lot of Mets says whether it's good experience or bad, you hope he learns from it and has been through this before. Mikey
There's
Milana,
there
yeah,
definitely has been situations where there are people that don't do well their first time as a GM. They get a second crack at the job. They know what they did wrong and they learn from it and they do better the next time. So you just have to hope, obviously, that that's the case here.
yeah, without a doubt. The next one from Mikey Milana, you have to think he's less limited under this owner than he was in Anaheim. Um, Mongazoria asked, "Is it official?" I believe we are getting closer. Not team announced, but
Right.
big name insiders are
Yeah.
basically saying
I
it's official.
I'm gonna say when Jeff Passan says something's happening,
We listen.
we listen. So that's why we went live. Obviously we have the podcast tomorrow. So if you're watching this live, thank you. I mean, it's Monday night at 9:30 p.m.
On a whim.
On a whim, just get up, do it, because it felt like it was beyond just rumor at this point. So it was worth going live, and obviously we're gonna have an hour plus on this tomorrow.
Our old reliable listener, Clay Senator, says, "Tremendous brick wall. Joe needs to step his game up." Although, Joe, I do like
I
your
got pictures.
decorations.
I
Yeah,
got
you
my
have
boy.
decorations. You're
uh,
not a
Um,
white wall.
I got my guy Mike Scott, and I got the goat Roger. So unfortunately, Clay, this is the best I got for now. But maybe I'll get. Is that real brick? Because I know a lot of people do faux brick.
No, this is the real deal, my friend. In
All right.
Hoboken, these buildings are 100 years old.
Well, yes, I definitely have to work on my background. But Clay, if you watched last time, there was nothing behind me, so we're calling this progress.
Another one in here from Real Antoine says the Angels players stay injured, miss on pitchers. Not hard to explain what happens, still not winning. So
I mean,
they've had their
look,
they've had their
yeah,
injury problems, no doubt
yeah,
about that. Which
and
we know very well here.
yeah. So I mean, injury problems happen. There's no question about that. That's probably throughout almost every team in the sport. It's just kind of what happens. I do agree, though, with the question about the inability to build a pitching staff for 5 years. And they
It's got to
seemingly,
be a concern, right?
yeah, they whiffed on a bunch of free agents like Garrett Cole. Like it wasn't for a lack of effort. It was just not able to get the job done. So is that on Epler? Is that just players not wanting to play for the Angels? It's tough to say, but again, this is, we can have this conversation about all the questions associated with Billy Eppler because there's a reason he's not still the Angels GM, obviously. So definitely a valid question and something that they'll have to say, you couldn't build a pitching staff in Los Angeles. What makes you think that you can in New York?
What do you think of any managerial connections here? Do you think we could finally start connecting dots or not really?
Really have to look into some stuff, but the early name that they're talking about is Brad Osmus,
Yep.
who managed for Detroit. I think he made the playoffs once or twice with Detroit, and then he managed 1 year with the Angels. And from what I read, basically got ousted by Artie Moreno after 1 year, quite possibly because Joe Madden became available. So I think it was just Joe Madden became
Reactionary move.
available, and it's just like we had a bad year. Joe Madden's available. Adios. I know there's a lot of people that aren't high on Osmus as a manager. I don't know enough about him to strongly opine on the situation, but he's a name that so far people are talking about. But Andy Martino actually reported for SNY that Epler has a list of managerial candidates. So they'll go through an interview process and things like that. And, that's pretty standard for a GM interview situation. If you interview, the first question they're asked, like, all right, who do you have on your list as manager or coaching staff? Things like who are people that you know of that you would want to bring in? You don't kind of just interview and then they go, oh, well, we'll kind of figure it out, I guess. You have to have an idea of
A
what direction.
plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a question from CT Bays in here who said any thoughts on potential manager connections to Epler and Clay brought up Osmus as well. JAD54 said, "How long do you think till they hire a manager?" I think this process would come together pretty quickly, right? Although we said that
Man, I
last
don't know.
time and we were
I don't
very,
know.
very wrong.
I mean, ultimately, I don't know. I don't know. I don't. We're at a very weird off season, weirder than any year before, because we're here recording on November 15th, and we are just over 2 weeks away from baseball shutting down, or at least very likely shutting down for 1 month, 2 months, few weeks, whatever.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how big of a rush there is to hire a manager. It's just going to be interesting to see how they go through the process because as you get later into the offseason, these other teams are planning their 2022 strategy. They're not really talking about letting you take their bench coach anymore or take their hitting coach. So that's why you wonder a guy like Osmus, who don't think is actually with a team right now. Is a guy that you could bring in and you're not impacting anything else.
CT also said Cohen not going to be getting in the way as an owner the way Moreno did, which we will
We
see.
don't know. We don't
Yeah,
know
we'll
that.
see.
Yeah,
Hopefully.
he said that, and as of now, I have no reason to not believe him. But let's just keep an eye on it. There's at least some worry. That's part of the reason that we're here on November 15th, just now talking about the Mets hiring somebody. It's because part of it was concern about Steve Cohen, rightly, wrongly, time will tell. But yeah, that was definitely part of it.
Another question from JD Rap 10. Javi Baez back, yay or nay? Joe and I were texting about this today. I feel very strongly about Baez being back, that I would want him back. Joe called it a bad investment on a 5-year deal. I think ultimately I'd be more surprised if he wasn't back than if he was, just because of Lindor's influence. And there's a part, I mean, there's a fit here for Baez. There really is.
So Baez is probably going to be back,
Yeah,
and I've talked myself into it where like I understand, and I do understand. It's not like I'm just trying to make something up to make myself feel better, but ultimately, the investment to me, a guy like Baez, in my opinion, is not going to age well. Very, very violent in all aspects of the game, which is a great thing for us to watch as a viewer. But as you're aging as a ball player, that's what gets you hurt. That's when things kind of start to fall apart a bit. So Baez, I think, is going to be a very good. If the Mets bring him back, I think he'll be a very good player for the next
2,
years.
3. Yeah,
Yeah, I think he'll be good for the next 3 years. That's why, to me, if you're going to re-sign him, I'd really like to keep it to 4, where I can say, if I get 3 out of these 4 years good, then it's a successful contract.
sure.
But when you get to 5, 6, I've even seen rumors of 7 years for Baez.
No way. That'd be crazy.
When you start getting the ranges like that, that's when you're looking at a deal that'll probably bite you in the ass.
Yeah, especially when you're looking at a team that realistically is going to have a lot of guys getting into that mid to late 30s still on the roster. They're going to hit that long ways away from now. The guy turned 28 yesterday, but with
Yeah.
Lindor down the road, if you look at it right now, they're dealing with Cano right now. It's hard to believe Robinson Cano has 2 years left on his contract with the Mets right now. So
And he's playing winter ball. Went 2 for 4 the other night, hit the ball really hard. So, I mean,
Robinson Cano is going to be on the Mets next year. I have fully convinced myself that is. I don't know if he'll be playing every day, but Robinson Cano is going to be on the Mets next year.
he's gonna be there barring something happening, maybe another test, who knows, but he's gonna be there.
Did you take anything away from Sandy? I think for the first time we've ever seen him during his tenure, speaking openly to having a very flexible budget.
I
It
thought, I
was
mean,
weird to see him like that.
yeah, when he said flexibility and they're like, "How much?" He's like, "A lot." It's like,
Like,
I mean,
stop asking me. We have money.
and I'm sure he didn't expect to be when he was being the GM for a few years here under the previous ownership. I'm sure he was never expecting, when asked about flexibility, to say we have a lot of it. So I'm sure he's pretty excited. But here's the great part. According to Andy Martino, and it's consistent with what I've heard is what Sandy wants, is Billy Eppler's running baseball. He's going to come in and he's going to be at the head of that table. Sandy Alderson said at the GM meetings last week that ideally they'd be hiring a GM that can sit at the head of the table where he can just have a seat at the table. And I'm okay with that. Sandy being an advisor is not a bad thing. He's a Hall of Fame executive. Just need him out of the chair of making the ultimate decision. And I'm glad they got someone that's capable of doing it the day he gets hired.
All right, some rapid fire to close this thing out because we got plenty of good questions coming in. This one from Griffin Michael. Any chance Epler leverages Cohen's money to offer big signing bonuses to lure free agents before the lockout?
Um,
Maybe one.
yeah, maybe.
Maybe one.
I think most of the really big free agents are gonna wait until everything's resolved, so they know that what they can do financially.
Really good one here from Lotta Metz, who said he has has a podcast but loves ours. Said honestly, Simeon is a better fit than Baez or Bryant. Agree or disagree? Hold over till Beatty and Vientos. The one thing
Qualifying
with
off the note
Simeon
that
is he's a little older and he's got to get his biggest deal possible now.
Qualifying offer. No thanks.
Oh, I
See ya.
didn't know that.
No, thank you. Not giving
Yeah.
up the 14th pick for anybody. Sorry.
No, not for a 32-year-old either. I
No.
know he's been great. Yada yada.
Yeah, no, he's great and he'll be good for someone. And if the Mets only had one first round pick, I
Do it.
wouldn't mind giving the second round pick for someone.
Yeah.
But a
The Mets
first,
are in a unique position with qualifying offer players.
agreed.
It is what it is. It stinks, but it's also nice to have 2 first-round picks. So, this one from Clay. Do you guys not have hair product in, no makeup work before the show? When we jump on after 9, yeah, and I'm not at Bleacher Report during the day, no makeup, no hair product. So this is and Joe wasn't on SMY today, shockingly. So this is raw. This is us. I'm
Yeah,
wearing pajama pants right now, okay? So,
I got
all
my
right.
joggers on.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, this one from the right one, baby. Bryant and Baez, let's bring Chicago East.
Maybe.
I would be really excited if they had Chris Bryant and Javi Baez added this offseason. Even though those deals might age terribly, I would be really excited for at least 2 years. Clay says Cano will be here. He agrees. Okay. A lot of Mets. What would a Matt Chapman package look like? That's a real. The A's are an
Good
interesting
question.
team in terms of their pieces.
Yeah, so Chapman, I think is at the forefront of getting
Bad
dealt.
year last year
Yeah,
offensively.
yeah. I mean, he's not going to give you everything you like offensively. He strikes out a ton. He's not a huge on base guy. He's not a huge average guy.
Streaky home run hitter.
He's a power and defense player. I mean,
Yep.
when we talk defense, I mean, you're talking just as good as Nolan Arenado defensively at third base. Like, this is special.
Yeah.
And with his price tag of roughly $9.5 million is his estimate for arbitration this year, and then one more year of control after this, I do think you'd have to part with at least one pretty significant piece, whether that's on the big league roster
Mauricio kind of
or
player.
a prospect like Mauricio.
Yeah.
You know, Mauricio could fit for them. Do they want a JD Davis or a Dominic Smith as kind of a guy that still
Sure.
a few years control on, but they get a big league piece back?
Yep.
Chapman's one to watch for me.
Okay. This one from EDG914. I don't believe they'll sign any free agents who are offered the QO. What do you guys think? We both agree. Yeah,
Agreed.
we've been saying
I'd be
we're gonna record the pod tomorrow. It'll be out Wednesday morning. But that's something we're gonna say every week. We'd be shocked.
Yeah.
So CT says I think Cohen is gonna spend the cash. Ideally, it's the extra year on guys we want.
Oh, no.
No, you want the money up, not more years.
Ideally, it's a year less and more money. I care more
Yeah.
about the money. I care more about the length. Get bigger deals.
B. Mullins said, "Is Noah gone if he declines the qualifying offer?" I don't
No.
think so. I think Noah's going to be back.
Yeah, I think he could be back, and it is a possibility. I've heard it is a possibility that he does turn down the qualifying offer after seeing what happened with Eduardo Rodriguez today, getting 5 years and $80 million from the Tigers. Noah's market might be a little better than we think, but ultimately, I'd expect him to be back with the Mets, whether that's on the qualifying offer, which we'll know by Wednesday. He has until Wednesday to decide. And if he declines it, then maybe you work out a 2 or 3 year deal with an opt out or something to that effect. I still think Noah Syndergaard ends up back with the Mets.
Yeah, me too. I think Syndergaard would probably be looking at like a 2-year, $26 million deal if he tried to go to the market, where instead he could take the 1-year juiced up deal for 18 and then reestablish value to get one of these, like Erod just got even bigger contract than that. Speaking of pitching, this one from the Statman 725. If they don't sign Stroman, how about Gosman or trade for someone? I think ultimately that's what they're going to do. I think they're going to trade for a starting pitcher this offseason. That's what I'm convinced of, at least.
Gosman's going to be very expensive. And if we're talking signing Baez and Bryant or Baez and Marte, there's only so many big money deals that are going to get issued. And my money's on 2 big ones. So kind of pick where you want them.
This is a good point. From Real Antoine goes, Erod got 77 mil. What does Stroman get? Yeah, I think Stroman's looking at 100 mil comfortably.
Yeah, I think Stroman's going to end up 100, 110, maybe something like that.
CT said, obviously, I understand the structure we want, but when other teams get involved, not our choice. Yeah, that's how it's going to go. Yeah, you're absolutely right. When you want to close out a free agent deal, you do have to add on years. That's why these things get up to 7, 8. These deals get insane.
Yeah.
Okay. Another pick. Okay, this is from Mikey. He said another pick for us if Noah declines and another 18 million to spend. We would live if he went elsewhere. Tons of question marks with Thor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think that's a crazy take. I think we've become so established in just assuming he's back on that 1 year, $18 million deal. You keep in mind they're going to get an extra pick from Conforto.
Yeah.
So you got to remember that. I just, my take with the Mets is, and why I've become like this with Syndergaard is you just can never have enough. And you really can't. I mean, like I learned that so much. Last year was our first full year doing the pod. And when we did the spring training previews, I was like, wow, they have 5 starters. Eventually, they're going to have 6, and they're going to have to kick someone out. They got a 7th and 8th guy that can eat innings on double headers. And by July,
Everything's gone.
Tyler
Yeah.
McGill was up, and I didn't even know who Tyler McGill was.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's why I'm like, bring him back. I don't care.
Yeah, bring back, get as much pitching as you can. But if Syndergaard does reject the qualifying offer and opts to sign elsewhere for whatever reason, like you said, Mets get another draft pick. Cool, that draft class will rule. And
yeah, you'll love it.
Sign John Gray. There you go. There's your Noah replacement.
Joe, you got to take my mindset with the Jets. It's good for business for you. If the Mets
Oh.
have a million picks, people are going to need you everywhere.
Oh yeah,
Keep that in mind.
It'll be very busy, and the That's So Mets podcast will get the best draft content that you're going to find. That's for sure.
All right, last one. And thank you so much, everybody, for sticking with us. It's been a lot of fun. We've had consistently like 70 to 100 people in here, which is really cool.
Nice.
The last one from N. Harrison said, odds Conforto is gone. I put it at a 5% chance Conforto is back. What about you, Joe?
Well, I was going to say a 95% chance he's gone. So basically,
go ahead.
Yeah, I think Conforto's a goner, and I appreciate Conforto maybe more than some other Mets fans do. But yeah, he's gonna get paid. I know there's a lot of people that were like, "Oh, Conforto, take the qualifying offer, reestablish yourself." The guy's gonna get over $100 million. I'll bet anyone on that right now. He's gonna get 100 million plus, and he won't get Springer money, which is kind of what we envisioned last year. But losing $20 million, I think he'll be okay.
Last one, really good point by Clay. Paying Thor $19 million for 150 innings, he better be excellent. It is interesting.
Good luck getting. I don't even know if you're banking on 150 innings.
Yeah, he said before that. What are we really expecting?
Yeah.
Everyone asking questions, in that case, leave these under the pod or under Joe's tweet tomorrow for the pod. We will answer all of these on the pod. We're gonna have a pretty long show tomorrow with a little bit more in depth on Eppler. Of course, we're gonna start to look ahead now officially to some managerial candidates, some of the frontline free agents that are very obvious, like a Syndergaard, like a Baez, Starling Marte, along those lines. This is a lot of fun. We'll definitely do more live streams now that we know how many people just love sending the questions. It's fun. Subscribe to That's So Mets on YouTube. This is going to be up on the YouTube channel too. So if you can't join us live randomly at 9:30 on a Monday night, you could always go back and watch it. And if you subscribe, you get notified. Joe, closing thoughts for the people before we get out of here.
Next time, we're actually going to figure out this YouTube. We just decided to wing it, and then there was this whole verification thing or something that
they blocked us. They're like, you're not going on here for another 24 hours.
Yeah, they blocked us. So I appreciate everyone hopping on Twitter, and I think it's an exciting time. We've been waiting for this opportunity to go live to talk about the Mets hiring a GM, and it almost felt like it was never going to happen. And they have one now. So now you take the step forward. What's next? And that's what I think we'll be talking about on the podcast and future YouTube videos, where we will definitely be able to go live on YouTube next time.
All right. Thanks so much, everyone. We'll catch you on the pod.